Will delegates please take their seats? If I want to shout, then hear me.
Try again, Paul.
If people can hurry to take their seats, thank you.
I think you're live now.
Is it live now? Yeah, brilliant. Can those in the lobby please hurry to take their seats? Okay, well, according to my watch, it is 1:15, so we will resume the governing body, session 2. Welcome, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed lunch, had a chance to get a bit of fresh air. The next session will cover 3 items. The first of these is a presentation on the Advent course, O Come, Let Us Adore Him, which the Bishop of St Asaph will introduce. It's been produced by the Bench of Bishops. There will be 2 introductory videos about the course, which will run for about 7 minutes, and the Bishop of St Asaph will then allow the governing body the opportunity to explore 3 questions relating to the course from the videos, which will be on the screen. So if I could ask Bishop of St Asaph to begin.
Gregory Cameron, Bishop of St Asaph, ex officio member of governing body. And with a trailer like that, Paul has almost pinched everything I need to say. Governing body, we have a treat in store for you now in the post-lunch graveyard slot. Something to keep you awake and to stimulate you and encourage you to think about your faith. The Archbishop has already referred to the learning community which he initiated and the work that the various iterations of that community are doing. Some of the early feedback that we got from the learning community was that if we as bishops wanted to talk to you about collegial ministry, we had to model collegial ministry ourselves. And that people wanted the bishops to be active and frontlining on a teaching ministry within the life of the Church in Wales. And so the Archbishop challenged us earlier this year, would it be possible for the bishops to write an Advent course, to produce together a course for the delight, delectation and education of the Church in Wales. And the result is, O come, let us adore him, a deliberate quote from one of the most famous Christmas carols, Adeste Fideles. And the Advent course, O come, let us adore him, is something that you are going to see happening in every church in the Church in Wales. It's something that you're going to be able to adopt and use with your congregations and ecumenical partners. You're welcome to use it as well. We're so excited about it. It's a series of Bible studies, and those Bible studies are based on the Gospel readings for the 4 Sundays of Advent, for Christmas Day, and for Epiphany. You see, there are 7 sessions, and there are 7 bishops. So each bishop is going to lead a session of this exciting and amazing course. So it's been produced by the bishops with a great deal of help, and I'd particularly like to acknowledge to governing body the help of James Tout, the Archbishop's chaplain, who did a lot of the liaison work. James, just wave at us. You know him because he spoke to us with such authority before the Eucharist this morning. And Georgia Day, who is the digital content provider of the governing body. A new post. Georgia, would you stand up and wave at us so everyone can see you? And James and Georgia corralled the bishops and worked with our diocesan comms advisors to pull this course together. Now, what's going to happen is you're about, as Paul has said, to see 2 videos, both starring the Archbishop. And the first video is a short video, and it's the trailer for the course. And this is going to be available next week on the Church in Wales Facebook page, on the Church in Wales website, and we want you, as members of governing body, to give that trailer as wide a coverage as possible. So copy the links, paste it, send it to your friends, send it to your enemies, certainly send it to your church committee. Let's get the message out there. And the second video you're going to watch also stars the Archbishop, who is doing the introductory session. He's not got the gospel like the rest of us. The Archbishop is speaking to Psalm 95. But the idea of him presenting this introductory session to the course is to give you all a taste of what the course is like. So, members of governing body, you're going to do it. You're going to do the introductory session this afternoon. And after we've listened to the Archbishop's introduction, you're going to be given the delightful extended period of 8 minutes. 8 minutes. We didn't want to test your patience too far. 8 minutes in which to respond to the 3 questions that the Archbishop has articulated from those videos. Just when you're getting into the discussion, I will interrupt, wrap up the session, and then we can move on to next business. But now, members of governing body, our videos.
Welcome to O Come, Let Us Adore Him, our Advent course, an invitation to journey through the season of Advent as we wait expectantly for the coming of Christ as King. Our course is an invitation to reflect on key themes like love, joy, peace, patience, all of which the birth of Jesus initiates, spanning the length and breadth of Wales. Our course consists of readings and reflections and discussion questions, each led by one of the bishops of the diocese. So, whether you intend on doing this course yourself or you get a group together, it's an opportunity for us to grow spiritually and draw closer to God. Do get a group together, prepare for Advent, and oh come, let us adore Him.
I think we're waiting for, this is dead air, isn't it? I think they call it on radio. Are they queuing up? Yes, I think they're ready. They're ready for us to queue up the second one. Slight technical problems, I think, because we don't seem to have a picture. Waiting for the test card to come up. It's like interlude music, or... I'm quite sure. Slight technical hitch. We seem to have a few technical issues, so I think we're going to pause this item and come back to it when we have the correct technology working. So we'll move then to agenda 9, question time. Question time, we've received 4 questions to the governing body. I'm to remind you all of the procedure for question time. It's set out towards the back of the agenda on the page headed Procedural Matters. Current practice is that the questioner may make a brief comment, brief, it's underlined and in bold, after hearing the answer, or, and that's in bold and in capital letters, ask one supplementary question only. We won't be reading the questions out because you will already have them in your paperwork. But the first question is from the Reverend Geraint John and will be answered by the Bishop of St Asaph.
So, governing body, Gregory Cameron, Bishop of St Asaph, ex officio member. I personally think the chair should have asked the archdeacons present to break out ice creams in the intermission. But instead, you've got my answer. Now, this is, I'm afraid to say, a fairly long answer. Geraint articulated an important question, and he deserves an answer in full, and that is what I'm going to offer. I'm going to suggest that the Secretariat can make copies of the answer and make those available to members of governing body should you wish them. The April 2022 statement to which Geraint refers in his question actually included a reiteration of the bench's statement from a year previously, which was responding to the then Conservative government in Westminster, who had first announced that it was considering legislation on conversion therapy. In it, I think the position of the bench is very clear. We said, anything which seeks to suggest that there is something inherently wrong or sinful in those who are non-heterosexual, or which seeks to force people to try and change their sexuality, is, we believe, wrong. It is both abusive and traumatizing, as those who have experienced such therapy can testify. We join our voices with the Royal College of Psychiatrists and other healthcare professionals in asserting that the practice of gay conversion therapy inflicts lifelong damage on those who are forced to undergo it and has no place in the modern world. We understand that the Senedd will also consider this matter and urge the Senedd to bring in robust legislation that will ban conversion therapy in all its forms, thereby offering protection to LGBTQI+ people in Wales from this abusive and damaging practice. Following that statement, we received correspondence from the Evangelical Fellowship of the Church in Wales, who asked for clarification. And we further wrote this: you ask the bishops what we mean by opposing gay conversion therapy in all its forms. Again, we believe this to be straightforward and plain. Any supposed therapy which purports or claims to convert a person's sexuality is, in our opinion, abusive and should be banned. You ask whether, quotation, open discussion and grace-filled prayer with someone who wants to explore biblical teaching on the issue of sexuality should, in the opinion of the bishops, fall under such a ban. Sadly, this positive-sounding phrase leaves far too much to individual interpretation. These seemingly innocuous words can be used to disguise practices in which pressure is brought upon vulnerable LGBTQIA persons to submit to efforts aimed at the conversion of their sexuality, including attempted exorcisms and worse. Such practices can be designed, consciously or unconsciously, to play on people's sense of shame or anxiety and signal that unless they conform to heterosexual norms, they can neither be true disciples of Jesus nor accepted members of the congregation with which they wish to become associated. A toxic mixture of motivation to avoid embarrassment, to please a revered spiritual leader, to assuage long-standing guilt or shame can be triggered, which we as bishops believe would be abusive. Our advice to members of FQ, and I may add here today to you, by extension, all ministers of the Church in Wales, is that they ought to avoid any practice which comes close to being capable of being interpreted as abusive in this way. Indeed, given the deep psychology of human sexuality, we believe that it should be left to the specialist to intervene, if indeed that is necessary. The Church's role is to offer welcome, acceptance, and friendship, and, if requested, prayer that God's grace can be operative in the situation and that a person would know God's guidance and blessing without a defined outcome. Furthermore, as you've heard already today, the bench is currently in the process of undertaking two important pieces of work. First, it is working with the Safeguarding Service of the Church in Wales and the Doctrinal Commission to explore, define, and respond to the issue of spiritual abuse within the Church. That's the report that was mentioned this morning. Conversion therapy clearly falls within the ambit of this work. Secondly, the bench is currently reconsidering the statement of 2002 concerning the position of the Church in Wales on the matter of sexuality and seeking to update it for the contemporary context. It would not be wise in this answer to anticipate the outcome of these two pieces of work. But the Reverend Geraint John can be assured that all four of the proposals in his question are broadly consonant with the direction of the work which is being undertaken. His suggestions will assist us in defining the clarity which is required in these pieces of work, and full answers will be forthcoming in the near future. It is a work in progress. Finally, as far as potential legislation is concerned, I am reliably informed that the Welsh Government is putting its own work on hold in order to develop a joint Four Nations approach in conjunction with Westminster. The bishops of the Church in Wales continue our support for such legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bishop Gregory. The Reverend Geraint John has the right to make a short comment or to ask a supplemental question.
Thank you. Just to thank Bishop Gregory for a comprehensive answer to what was an even longer question initially. It's encouraging to hear what is going on, and I look forward to seeing those 2 additional pieces of work that you're referring to. And just a thank you for your commitment to protect the well-being of our members and those who are not yet members of the Church in Wales from the LGBTQ community. So thank you.
Thank you. Question 2 was from the Venerable Andy Grimwood and will be responded to by Professor Medwin Hughes, the Chair of the representative body.
Medwin Hughes, ex officio, and Chair of the representative body. Ga i ddiolch i'r archwiliad hon am ei gwestiwn. Mae'n gwestiwn pwysig. Rwy'n gobeithio bod ni'n gallu ymateb yn briodol i'r cwestiwn. And you should be able to see a table as well, hopefully, being presented above. The representative body employs a wide range of people with different specialisms. It has always employed accountants, surveyors, lawyers, and administrators. And in recent years, these have been supplemented by safeguarding experts, professionally accredited HR staff, and IT specialists. To ensure that we get access to the best possible staff, salary levels are benchmarked against the market rate for the charitable and public sectors in the South Wales region. The data shows, and it should hopefully be coming up.
I think we're having a couple of technical difficulties. They're working on it at the moment.
Right, well, I apologise for that, but with your permission, I'll continue with the narrative, and I'm sure that it'll be shared later for colleagues. The data shows that the number of people that are paid more than 60,000 per year, and that was the question asked, has more than doubled in the last 10 years. There are several reasons why it appears that this is the case. The 10-year period covered by the question saw UK wages rise by 43.7%, according to the Office of National Statistics. A salary of 60,000 in 2014 is therefore equivalent to 85,800 in 2024. There were 5 people paid more than 60,000 in 2014. The number of staff currently paid more than 85,800 is 7. Due to inflation, some salaries that were significantly under the 60,000 threshold in 2014 are included in the figures in later years, as annual rises took them over the boundary. This occurred in 2017, 2018, 2022, and twice in 2023. There are also some years where there is effectively a double headcount. This happens when senior staff leave and are being replaced. In some cases, there is a short period of handover, usually lasting a few months, where there are 2 salaries on payroll. This occurred in 2016, 2017, 2019, and 2024. In those years, the headcount appears artificially inflated. During the review period, the only year in which additional roles were created at a salary above 60,000 was 2023. This was the result of a restructure which saw the creation of a new group management structure. This created 2 new senior roles, leading the operations group and the mission and strategy group. 1 new role was also created in the mission and strategy group, which met the threshold of the question. Now, the representative body staff are accountable to trustees and subject to their oversight and review. This, of course, includes robust scrutiny of staff costs, headcount, cost of living increases and salary levels. As trustees, we understand that recruiting good staff in a competitive market requires reasonable pay parity with employers who operate in comparable sectors and locations. I believe that we are getting outstanding value for the money we pay, and that we are fortunate that some high-caliber people, because of a sense of calling and a commitment to the Church of Wales and to the values and mission of the Church in Wales, choose to work for us rather than pursue more lucrative opportunities in the private sector. That said, trustees are mindful of the optics of new RB appointments, as they can be seen from the diocese. Mae hyn yn rhywbeth da ni'n ymwybodol iawn ohono fo. Sut mae hyn yn edrych o gyd-destun yr esgobaeth, pan mae hi'n anodd o safbwynt arian o fewn yr esgobaethau yn bod ni'n buddsoddi yn y canol. When a diocese is under pressure and recruitment is difficult, it can be frustrating, and I can appreciate it can be extremely frustrating to see expenditure elsewhere. I would remind colleagues that most of the RB trustees are diocesan-nominated members and have supported the changes that have happened. That is because we believe that senior appointments in the centre are fundamental to addressing areas of risk that have carried a reputational threat for the whole of the Church in Wales. The most obvious example, of course, is in safeguarding, but there are a range of areas where the traditional structures of the Church have struggled to meet contemporary expectations, and where dioceses have lacked the resource or the scale to respond. As trustees, we consider that expansion of RB services is happening in response to the need within the diocese. It is right that this is a confederate and consensual process, and the dioceses should help define the services required from the representative body. That is why, for example, we are currently conducting a review of HR services provision to the diocese, and why we have done similar exercises in other areas. And I envisage that we will do far more of this in the future. Over the last 10 years, we have found that it is sometimes better and more economical to deliver certain administrative, compliance, and technical services from the RB to the diocese. This has incurred cost at the centre and has led to some additional senior appointments. But it has also served dioceses from using limited resource to respond to issues such as GDPR, DPS processing, or computer network security. I am content that RB staff expenditure offers real benefits to the Church in Wales and to the diocese. I believe that the changes over the last 10 years are achieving that aim and are allowing our diocese to focus greater time on resource and mission. Any expansion of the RB must be purposeful, must be consensual, and conceived in response to genuine need. I've said it before, and I'll say it again tomorrow. The only purpose of an RB is to serve. And in the context of service, sometimes we have to invest. But that investment has always have to be appropriate. I think we do need to have better communication. Communication between the centre and the diocese is key, in order sometimes to challenge a narrative, perhaps, of irresponsible growth. And we do need to better explain that the RB does not operate in isolation, and that the jobs its people do are to serve the wider Church in Wales. I've also suggested to colleagues, and hopefully with the permission of the bishops, that the senior staff of the representative body will have the opportunity every quarter to come to the diocese and to explain this has been the added value of the engagement of the work of the centre to support the services and the activities within the diocese. Diolch i chi am y cwestiwn, a gobeithio bod hwnna fod ei ateb priodol. Diolch.
Thank you, Professor Hughes. Archdeacon, you have the right to a brief response or a supplemental question.
I've got about 20 supplementary questions.
Well, you can only have
just
one.
one, okay. Andy Grimwood, nominated Archdeacon, Diocese of St Asaph. Can I first of all thank you for the depth of your answer and for the assurances that you gave governing body. Thank you. I suppose my supplementary question, I'll ask one question, but there are about 4 parts to it. Can I get away with that?
Do not try my patience, but
Okay.
they should be brief.
Okay. I'll take you off my Christmas card list.
Do I look bothered?
My question is really just a sort of general question. Has the time come for a review of all lay salaries at provincial level? If a time for review has come, what would be the mechanisms for that review? Who would conduct those reviews? And what role does governing body have in such a review?
Thank you for being brief. Do you want to make a response immediately?
I'm happy
Yep.
to give a holding response.
Yes. Yep.
And I'll still be on your, hopefully, Christmas card list as well. You raised some good questions, technical questions about process of reviews. The technical answer, it should be considered initially by the representative body. The representative body will set a process in place. It will go to the initial first committee of a HR committee, and then it will be considered for due processes, and that will be reported back. And I take your point about the request, what role a governing body would be part of that, and we will come back to you with that. I think that's as far as I can go now.
Thank you, Professor Hughes. Question 3 is from Elizabeth Crawford from the Diocese of Monmouth, and the response will be given by Mr. Tim Llywelyn, the Chair of the Standing Committee.
Tim Llywelyn, lay elected St David's. My thanks first of all go to Elizabeth for her question. Since the Constitution of the Church in Wales was first written in anticipation of disestablishment, the text has constantly been updated and amended by the governing body. Changes to the Constitution are made at virtually every governing body meeting to attempt to ensure that the text remains up to date and fit for purpose. A full rewriting of the Constitution would likely take several years' worth of governing body business time to debate, and would also require staffing resources far beyond the current capacity of the representative body. Therefore, there are no current plans to undertake such a project. However, the Standing Order does periodically commission work to update a particular part of the Constitution or a particular topic. To take one example, the Standing Committee has recently requested a working group to be set up to propose changes to the Constitution following the completion of the move to ministry areas across the province. Proposals for amendments to the Constitution may come from the Standing Committee, bench of bishops, a working group, or any member of governing body. The Secretariat warmly welcomes approaches from individual members about changes they might wish to propose, either for consideration by the Standing Committee or as a private member's motion or bill. Thanks again for your question and giving me the opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Tim. Elizabeth, would you like to ask a supplemental question or a brief comment?
Elizabeth Crawford, Diocese of Monmouth Lay. Thank you very much, Mr. Llywelyn, for that response, which was broadly as I'd expected, and I'm grateful for it. I particularly wish to ask about the inclusion of the words ministry area in the Constitution in any way you can find of fitting it in, because the Constitution forms the bedrock of our own governance documents. And for those of us who are working towards becoming a CIO, we find ourselves on slightly weak ground with the Constitution as it currently stands. So my supplementary question is, when will the standing committees work on the inclusion of the words ministry area specifically be concluded? Thank you.
Kim?
I will need to come back to you on when that work will be complete. But what I would suggest that you do is, you mentioned there about becoming a charitable incorporated organisation, a CIO. I know that Matthew Chinnery did produce a sort of a templated draft constitution for a CIO. And I just wonder whether you've got sight of that, because you have, fine. I just want to be sure that you've got that. But I'll certainly come back to you in terms of when the constitution will be fit for purpose to allow for the CIOs. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4 was from Dr. Heather Payne, and the response will be given by the Bishop of Llandaff.
Thank you. Mary Stallard, Bishop of Llandaff, ex officio. This is quite a long answer. There's quite a lot to say. The Lambeth Conference in August 2022 was attended by the whole bench, where we were able to meet, discuss and commit to several calls with our sister and brother bishops worldwide. And amongst these was the call to integrate the knowledge of science with our faith and our lives. Sometimes people ask, well, doesn't this sound very top-down? I want to explain to you that the shared work of the Anglican Church mostly begins in local churches. And a good example of this is that our very own Dr. Heather Payne was instrumental at a meeting of the Anglican Consultative Council in prompting the whole communion to launch an Anglican Health and Community Network, and that was launched on World Health Day in 2021 to connect, prepare and equip Anglicans across the communion to provide healthcare to accompany the sick and to advocate for equitable healthcare based on both trust in science and hope in God. So the calls, the networks and commissions of our communion are ways of responding together, and they are often rooted in our most local communities. The Church in Wales is in really good company in its work in faith and science. An alliance of 40 global faith leaders issued the following powerful call in October 2021, saying, "Faith and science are essential pillars of human civilization with shared principles and complementarities. We must address the challenges we face in daily life using the God-given knowledge of science and the wisdom of religion to know more and to care more." The Anglican Communion has established the Science Commission with a brief to draw on science as fuel for faith and worship, to promote science as a way of studying God's world and answering the basic mandate to build relationship with God's creation, to be knowledgeable about science for issues which Christians care about and about technologies which need the voice of the gospel. In the biological and medical sciences, we're already seeing extraordinary advances in the treatment of diseases from cancer to malaria. The COVID-19 vaccine was developed in less than 18 months, whereas perhaps 20 years ago, such work might have taken a decade. We already have more power in our mobile phones than NASA had to send astronauts to the moon. With artificial intelligence, machines can learn to produce human or convincingly human-sounding conversations. These scientific developments are gifts from God, but like every power, must be exercised with responsibility and humility. We have kingdom values to promote that call us to enable the flourishing of all people and the care of creation. The Lambeth Call on Science and Faith has been followed up with information webinars during July to September this year. And these have been designed to help provincial lead science bishops to make this call a reality through developing plans for provinces and dioceses to deepen faith through making use of the God-given gift of scientific knowledge. The webinars have provided a run-up to a global in-person conference, which is happening in October at Virginia Theological Seminary, where we will explore, as a peer group of lead science bishops, questions such as, how can my province or my diocese grow from this Lambeth call? What's already happening in terms of science and theology that we could build upon? What are the pressing needs of our communities that might benefit from an integrated scientific and theological approach? What resources could we bring together, such as expertise in ecology and carbon reduction, healthcare, community development, artificial intelligence and ethics? Groups like the Mothers Union, ACC networks, theological teachers and institutions can all contribute to this. We're asking how we can hear from the communities that we serve so that we can work together to develop shared priority areas for investment of time and resources that are sustainable and realistic commitments. We're asking how we can ensure we listen to the existing church and also reach out to hear those outside church so that our work benefits all God's people. Here in the Church in Wales, we've already made an important start using science to make our faith commitment a reality. We've done it in our carbon neutral aims and in our efforts to measure our carbon footprint, to use technology to reduce emissions where possible. And we've been talking about it at this governing body with the Environmental Summit coming up. Some of our outreach is already expanding to include taking science education more seriously. For example, the Messy Science Initiative, which many of our dioceses are already getting involved in. We've got the work of Mothers Union and other groups who are using evidence and effective communication to challenge issues such as gender-based violence. Our support of the Clewer Initiative uses evidence to address modern slavery and trafficking, and the work of our cathedrals and churches in offering sacred space to serve communities during COVID for vaccination centres and other care. Our use of technology for mission and for ministry. St Mark's Church in Wrexham has been awarded a Scientists in Congregations grant for a project called Explore Community Events in Church, which will give further inspiration for science-focused mission for all ages. There are so many possibilities for us as a province to bring together our great knowledge systems of science and faith in the context of our daily lives and to enrich our mission and ministry. And we need continued engagement from every diocese. We'll be inviting people to join a virtual network of interested scientists and theologians so we can develop a virtual structure to co-produce priorities, to share expertise and take things forwards. And this will help us as a province to develop a vision for integrated scientific and theological understanding to better serve God, our communities, and to reach out across the communion to learn from others who are also responding and exploring this call. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Payne, do you wish to make a comment or ask a brief question?
Heather Payne, lay elected Llandaff. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Esgob Mary. Thank you so much. You have said everything that is needed in the sense that this is a call. You are being called, and so I just want to underline the importance of the response. And it's not me calling on this mobile, it's the Lord Jesus. So please do consider whether you can respond to this call. I have agreed to coordinate responses. We will be sending out my email address, but please talk to me and just make contact in any way that you feel that you would like to be involved in this. We're gathering people together into a virtual network so that we can see how we can continue to serve. But thank you so much, Bishop Mary, and I hope we will be able to have something that we can use to both fulfill our mission as servants of Jesus here in this country, but especially being able to reach out and learn from all our brothers and sisters across the world who are also engaged in this, because they have a lot to teach us. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. That concludes the questions that were submitted formally. However, I have agreed to allow the lay secretary to respond in a bit more detail to the question that was put following the Archbishop's presentation in relation to the Church Growth Fund. Canon Lloyd.
Thank you. Simon Lloyd, Lay Secretary. Thank you for permission to speak. It occurred to me that there was a meeting of the RB's Finance Committee on Monday, and in one of the papers we produced for that meeting, all of the answers to the questions which were asked this morning were contained. So if I can give you a brief summary of that. The Church Growth Fund, £100 million, has the committee has met a few times now, and I want to update you on where we're up to. To remind governing body, there are 2 tiers. There is Tier 1, which is bids up to £10,000, and Tier 2, which is 10,000 up to 5 million for one diocese, and beyond that for a group of dioceses. In terms of Tier 1, starting with that, the committee has approved 2 grants so far. And with your permission, I'd just like to read out an email I received about one of those projects. This is from the vicar of the church, and this is a grant for just under £10,000. I wanted to let you know that we finally launched our first Sundays initiative yesterday after 5 months of preparation and promotion. We were hoping for 50 to come, which many thought was wildly optimistic. We had almost 60. There was a tremendous buzz that led to really good, open and thoughtful small group discussions about what faith means. And the buzz following the session is amazing. It's early days when it comes to the long-term impact of this, or even whether we will sustain the numbers, but we couldn't be off to a better start. That's one of the 2 approved. The Church Growth Fund's allocation group are meeting next week. They have a further 9 Tier 1 bids from across the province to consider. There's been a flurry of activity on that. Turning to Tier 2, that's the larger ones, which are, as I say, 50,000 and above. Where we're up to at the moment is there are 3 projects which are approved. 2 of them are in St Asaph Diocese. One is for a Mission Hubs initiative. That's a grant of 4.6 million. Another one in St Asaph for Pioneer Missioners. That's just over £1 million, £1.8 million. And one in the Diocese of Monmouth, which is for a Schools Engagement Pioneer project, and that's for just a shade under 1.3 million. All of those 3 grants are approved. Where we're up to is there's some post-grant work going on at the moment to agree feedback mechanisms and, as importantly, how the learnings from those projects can be shared widely. Not only so we can learn from them, but we can be encouraged by them. When the committee meet next week, they have the 4th Tier 2 bid. That is for a shade under 2.8 million. That's for St Mary's in Swansea. And that, again, is a bid that's been put together by the diocese and will be considered there. If you add all those figures up, that brings a commitment. If all of that is approved next week, that brings us to round about £10 million approved from the Church Growth Fund. So there is a great deal happening. It's taken some time for dioceses to prepare. And further down, talking to the dioceses, there's a lot more in preparation from those dioceses that haven't bid yet, and also from dioceses which wish to bid further. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canon Lloyd. We're going to move back now to Agendum 8 because I've been told that the video is now ready. So when the technical people are happy, and here it goes.
Welcome to our Advent course, Oh Come, Let Us Adore Him. Some years back, there was a book produced called Your God is Too Small. And it was followed a few years later by another book called Our God is Still Too Small. The writers both wondered if we could craft a faith in God which matched the picture given to us in Holy Scripture and revealed in Jesus Christ. Our psalm, and indeed this course, is all about that God. A God who is extraordinary. The depths of the earth are his, the mountains are his, he made all things. Who knows us so deeply. We are the people of his pasture and the flock under his care, the psalmist said. You see, faith in such a God makes new perspectives possible. Whether we believe this world, fractured and flawed as it is nonetheless precious and worthy of our attention. Whether we believe that people, equally flawed and fragile, are made in the image of God and unique. And whether we believe supremely that God could become one of us, born as a child, dying as a criminal, being raised to new life, offering hope to all. I want to invite you to travel deeply into the themes of this course. In this course, we'll be introduced to the person of Jesus Christ and address some of those really big questions. Advent means arrival. It means the arrival of Jesus Christ as a child, and also as we look forward to his reign of truth and love. But it can become something personal for you too. The arrival of new faith and new hope for you in God. Pray that it might be so.
Psalm 95, verses 1 to 7. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down in worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care.
As we bring this introductory session to a close, I'd like to offer you some questions for your consideration on your own or in your church community. And the first is this: can we see something of God in the world created around us? And if so, what? The second question is, how do we let God create a deeper faith within us? A faith which matches and reflects the picture we're given in Holy Scripture. And the third is, Advent promises so much. What are your expectations for this Advent course? Advent 1 will take us to the Diocese of St. Asaph and Bishop Gregory Cameron. They'll focus on Luke chapter 25, verses 21 to 26. I'd like to thank all of you who've made this course possible and participated within it. So thank you, goodbye, and God bless you.
Bishop Gregory, do you want to give a reminder of what we're going to do next?
It should be very straightforward. We should have another slide appearing shortly with the 3 questions posed by the Archbishop, and we'd like you on your tables now to discuss those 3 questions, and you have 8 minutes starting. Well, just before you start, you'll be delighted to know that we've scheduled another hour for feedback once you've concluded. No, I'm joking. There won't be any requirement to feedback, but we hope you enjoy doing some theology together and it'll give you a taste of the discussions you can have when you run the courses back at home. 8 minutes, please, to run the course, and then a few comments from me to tie things up.
Yep, no problem.
I'll go and join my tape.
We're running slightly later because I think there's about 10 minutes then for the Betty Boothroyd said, time's up. So I'm going to invite the Bishop of St Asaph to give some concluding remarks. Can we have a little bit of hush, please?
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Look, I hope you enjoyed that. Governing body doesn't really get enough opportunities to discuss theology and to reflect on our faith. And on the bishop's table, we were talking about the importance, how do we let God create a deeper faith within us? We were talking about the importance of silent prayer and allowing the Spirit to speak to the heart of our being. It's very important that we encourage each other in that work. One of the bishops said, well, what's my teaching ministry? And part of the answer to that must be that we hope this course will be part of our teaching ministry for the Church in Wales and to help all of you. So I do hope that you'll use the trailer, the first video that we saw, which will be available next week, and encourage people to engage with this course. You'll have to find the 7 sessions, one before Advent, because the Advent 1 session with the Gospel for Sunday is the one that we're have produced from St Asaph. And I think in my mind, I hope that groups would meet in the week before the relevant Sunday, so that when the Gospel is proclaimed in church on the appropriate Advent Sunday, people would already recognise and resonate with that passage. It's going to be particularly tricky because Bishop Dorian does Christmas Day and Bishop David does Epiphany. And you're not going to have a Bible study in the parish on Christmas Eve or just before Epiphany, but arrange those sessions. Enjoy those sessions, and please, please use the course. The full course will be available on the Church in Wales website, available bilingually, although the Archbishop spoke to us in English with English subtitles. That's only because we didn't get the Welsh subtitles done in time for the presentation in governing body. But it is intended to be a fully bilingual course, and each session is fully downloadable and usable on any number of platforms. So we commend it to you, and spend Advent with your bishops. Nothing finer could be imagined.
Thank you, Bishop Gregory. We now move to Addendum 10, which is to do with clergy terms of service. This is an update to the governing body on the private members' motion at the April 2024 meeting, and there is a recommendation to be passed that the Standing Committee approve the drafting of the changes to the terms of service set out in the appendix to this paper and now recommends them to the governing body for adoption. I will ask Mr. Tim Llywelyn to propose the motion, and it will be seconded by the Bishop of St Asaph. Tim.
Tim Llywelyn, lay elected member, St David's. I will assume that you've all read the report. The reason this report is on the agenda is although a number of amendments to the private members' motion were planned to be made from the floor of the governing body meeting, none were made as debate of the motion was ended via procedural mechanism without a vote, on the basis that the changes proposed by the motion needed to be considered very carefully before any decisions were taken to guard against unintended consequences. Since the motion and the number of amendments which had been prepared to it had been discussed by the representative bodies, Human Resources Committee, the RB itself and the Standing Committee, the resulting text you see set out within your paper at this meeting is the fruits of those various discussions. The proposed amendments have been prepared in close discussion with provincial HR and legal department staff. The paper explains how the text of the original private members' motion and the intended amendments have been taken and formed into the text presented today. Clarity and minimising the arising of unintended consequences was the main reason for the debate in April being curtailed, and the work that was undertaken to form the new text has focused principally on clarity. For example, by referring to 6 weeks holiday, of which certain weeks must be taken at certain times, rather than to 4 weeks plus 2 weeks. You will see also that some guidance on maintaining patterns of ministry in ministry areas during holiday seasons is included too. I therefore formally propose the Standing Committee's recommendation and hand over to Bishop Gregory, a member of the RB's Human Resources Committee, and who has therefore been closely involved in this work, to second it. Bishop Gregory.
Bishop Gregory Cameron, Bishop of St Asaph, ex officio. You'll be fed up of me speaking, but I do promise not to speak again at governing body today. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to second this motion. When governing body voted to accept my motion of moving to next business, it did produce a rather abrupt end. And I think it's very important that governing body, that the committees of the Church in Wales keep faith with governing body and listen to what you discern and what you ask for. So I'm very glad to say that I think we can propose in the appendix to the report a full response to the many questions that were raised in the debate. And if you look at the clergy terms of service agenda and you look at the last page, that's the appendix which incorporates the changes that we're proposing are made to the clergy terms of service. There are, I think, a number of people to whom I'd want to give thanks for working very hard on this. The proposer of the motion, Tim, as chair of the Standing Committee, has mentioned that it went to the bench, it went to the HR Committee, it went to the RB, it went to the Standing Committee of the governing body. So it's been well looked at, but I'm also grateful for the intelligent work undertaken by Beck Murphy as head of HR in the national offices and by Matthew Chinnery as head of legal, who both gave invaluable guidance and help in drafting. So it's a positive duty for me to undertake today in proposing these changes to you. Basically, All those committees, but particularly the bench, had 4 undergirding principles. The first is that we wanted to be as generous as possible in the exercise of our duty of care towards the flourishing of our clergy. We really do want the clergy of the Church in Wales to know that the hierarchy, the institution, the church is on your side and wants to see you flourish. The second principle is we had to be very cautious about not becoming too detailed. And quite simply, that is because clergy are office holders, not employees. And the more detailed the clergy terms of service become, the more it is capable of being interpreted by the law that clergy are employees. And we think it's very important that clergy are office holders and have the freedom to shape their own ministry. If I go to Sainsbury's in Rhuddlan, am I working? No, Bishop, you'd say. But if I meet a parishioner who's recently bereaved and start talking about their grief and how they manage it, I think you'd want to give a different answer. And it's almost impossible, actually, to say when the work of a priest stops and starts. So being an office holder is actually quite an important idea, and it means the idea of saying, well, it'll be 48 hours a week, is actually pie in the sky, and most priests know that. So we wanted to be generous, but we wanted to be cautious and not be over-specific. Thirdly, we wanted the guidelines to be collegial. We are about shared ministry teams working in our mission and ministry areas, not soul saviours when we are working in ministry. And we wanted to ensure that there was good consultation, particularly around the taking of holidays, and not expecting the NSM to pick up the work when the stipendiary cleric was off. That's a point that was made in governing body. I'm looking at the person who raised it, and it's something that we wanted reflected in these guidelines. Fourthly, we felt we had to encourage the clergy in the end to take responsibility for their own well-being. You are professionals, and you don't need to be told day by day what the archdeacon or the bishop hopes from you. It would be impossible for us to supervise at that level of detail in any case. So there is a very important line which stresses that it is the responsibility of the cleric to ensure that they manage their working hours in a healthy way. And I'm proud to second the adoption of these revised terms and conditions to governing body. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bishop Gregory. Thank you, Tim. The motion is now open for debate or amendment. I will remind you, if you wish to make an amendment, it must be either sent as an email to amendments@churchinwales.org.uk or 2 written copies be given to the lay secretary. It would be really good if there are people intending to speak in this debate to give me an idea of how many people wish to speak, because that will also determine when we go to coffee. So if you wish to speak in the debate, please come to the side to give me an idea. Okay. Richard.
Thank you. Prenanda, Richard Mulcahy, Diocese of Monmouth, co-opted. Might be worth pointing out that I was one of those whose speech was lost by the procedural amendment back in April, which means you've got all of last time's speech to listen to now as well. Now, overall, I'd like to welcome the proposals. I think they don't go far enough, as I said a number of times. I have a day job, which is working as a civil servant. For the past 35 years, I've been a union rep, and for the past 7, part of the national executive of a union. So I see this issue of balancing terms and conditions perhaps slightly differently to my Lord Bishop of St Asaph. It's important that he talks of a duty of care that bishops and the hierarchy have to the clergy, but then this decides to somehow pass it back to the clergy to make up their own minds about how they work. There is a balance to be struck there. I think this is something we might want to consider later on, but I'm certainly not going to press for further changes here. I would like to say that whether I'd made myself persona non grata this morning because the only person who sat next to me was Kate, who of course made the original proposal. So I apologise if I pass that level of defilement on to anyone else. But we have these discussions as private members' bills which have already been thought out. The assumption that a bill has arrived here and nobody's thought about the consequences, which seemed to be the argument that came out in April, is not fair to the people who put so much time in creating those bills in the first place. Assume that the people who've done the work have done the work. Don't say, oh, we need to look at this in standing committee, RB, HR committee, or whatever. These can be done afterwards, but assume that people have done the work that they say they've done. I work with office holders on a day-to-day basis, those created by statutes of the National Assembly and of Senedd Cymru. We set them a whole set of requirements, maybe not their day-to-day tasks, but we do set out what they should do, how they should do it. It is not incompatible with being an office holder to have instruction on how you carry out your work. Thirdly, we talked about professionals not being told what to do. Obviously, I'm an amateur in this. I'm an MSM. Makes it slightly different. But you think of any set of professionals, from bankers, doctors, nurses, anyone, they all have regular and indeed constant, not only encouragement, but requirements of what they should do and how to do it. For heaven's sake, look at today's report on Grenville. How many professionals ignored the task they should be carrying out? You cannot say professionals are just allowed to go on by themselves. However, I'm going to start to rant, and I will stop ranting, because I think this is a good step forward. I'm grateful that, despite the process which has been carried out, we've got to what I think is the right answer. And no doubt, Gregory and I will have long discussions over the meanings of workers, employees, and office holders, none of which are quite the same thing, over dinner later. Diolch yn fawr.
Kate?
Kate O'Sullivan, cleric from Monmouth Diocese and the originator of the private members motion. I'd like to thank Standing Committee and HR and the Bench of Bishops for running with this and taking it seriously, because there is a tendency when these things get moved on to think it's being kicked into the wrong long grass. So I do feel that you've kept the faith, and that's absolutely brilliant. I think this does feel like the right answer. It feels like a step forward. And for those who are still not sure, who still think, well, clergy have all this freedom with their diary, I still maintain, not if you're a curate or a junior member of staff. And we all need to remember that those particular people, and NSMs too, are actually very vulnerable. But I think this actually makes them less vulnerable and also strongly encourages people to take necessary time off. After a conversation with Bishop Cherry, I had a lovely 2 days in Manchester this last week with my daughter, and she said, it's so lovely to actually be able to have you to visit for a change. And that's the sort of thing it frees us up to do, to keep our relatives and our friends close in a way that isn't always possible on 1 day a week. So a big, big thank you.
My best friend, the Archdeacon of St Asaph.
For that, I'll put you back on my Christmas card list. Andy Grimwood nominated Archdeacon St Asaph. This is really just a request to the Human Resources Committee, and in a way I think Bishop Gregory has already answered the question, but is there a way of giving archdeacons the tools to enforce this? You know, I'm aware of clergy who do not take their leave for whatever reason, and I would like the tools to enforce them to take their leave when I perceive that they need to. And likewise, I'm aware of some people who, perish the thought, abuse it as well. And I would like the tools to be able to put a stop to that. So it's really a request, can archdeacons be given tools to try and enforce office holders to take the leave that they're allowed? Thank you.
Dean of Newport.
Ian Black, nominated Dean. The Archbishop earlier used the image of the Olympics, and when I think about ordained ministry, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and we are needing to sustain ourselves, all who are engaged in ministry, ordained or lay, over a very long period of time, and I welcome this reworked terms for what they have done and what they achieve, and I'm grateful to those who put them together. I suspect this is going to be picked up by a number of people, as it has. The responsibility of the cleric to ensure that they manage their working hours in a healthy way. The intention of that I read as being we do have to take that responsibility. We are adults and grown-ups. However, we work within systems, we work within structures, and sometimes those structures can put pressures which people internalise. And one of the best church wardens I had was one who took seriously his role to ensure that I was okay. And we all need to have that responsibility to check out for one another and remind us when we're overdoing it. Or when we've just lost the plot for some reason, and often when we lose the plot, it's due to tiredness. So I welcome this wholeheartedly, but beware of the structural pressures which can derail things. It isn't just down to individual responsibility. We are a body. Thank you.
Adam.
Thank you, Adam Pawley, St Asaph, elected. Just to say thank you to everybody who's worked hard, clearly, to put this together. I think it's excellent, and I think it strikes a good balance between ensuring that we as clergy continue to care for our parishes and churches in our absence, and also, particularly as someone with 4 children and in-laws and parents living in the East Midlands and Devon, I'm sure they will well receive this too. Thank you. I support the motion.
Kevin.
Kevin Ellis, clergy, Esgoworth, Bangor. I would like to thank people who have put this together. I probably would like to say to the first speaker that as a stipendiary priest, NSMs are not amateurs, and certainly not...
myself as an NSM as an amateur.
Okay, we won't get into a debate, but thank you for your care and your trust. That we can manage our diaries, although sometimes need a little push. And I'm also mindful with having this extra wording in the terms of service, that this takes place in a context where not only clergy but our committed lay members are also working extraordinarily hard, balancing jobs, family, children, and increasing demands in the life of the church. So thank you very much. I fully support it, and grateful for all the hard work.
Thank you. Moira.
Moira Randall, co-opted lay Llandaff. I just want to
reiterate some of the points that have already been made by previous speakers. Yes, it says that clergy should take responsibility for their own well-being and their working hours. But as we've had that message today about working together and supporting each other as brothers and sisters in Christ, it is very important too to remember that there are people out there within your congregations who care for you. And speaking as a former lay chair whose role was to work strategically with the ministry area leader and the clergy team, I do feel that there should be a little bit included there just to re-emphasise that they too have a duty of care to the clergy that they work with, and that they also, just as the Archdeacon asked for powers to sort of like give that little prompting that it's time you took that time off, that should be included in the role of the lay chairs and indeed the ministry area councils that we have. Because we do care for our clergy, because without you, we have no shepherds. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? If you do intend speaking, please come forward, because otherwise, after Dr. Diamond, I will end the debate. Can I, Bell?
Thank you. Andrew Lightbourne, Monmouth elected cleric. Thank you for everybody who put the work into this. Thank you for Kate for the original motion that's forged the way for this. I too slightly worry about the statement, it's the responsibility of the cleric to ensure that they manage their working hours in a healthy way. That assumes that we work within a healthy system. I don't think that's an assumption that can necessarily be taken on face value. And we're not individuals, as others have said, we are part of a body. I have been looking to see if I could find a form of words, but I won't, to suggest an amendment, but I do think that's a worry. And I slightly worry on the second point where it says should be taken, wondering whether it should be changed to must be taken, so that we have must have one continuous free period of 48 hours on a monthly basis. Should seems to me to be a little bit vague.
Thank you. Canon Diamond.
Rosie Diamond, cleric, Bangor. As others, I very much welcome the support for the flourishing of both clergy and laity entailed in this piece of work, so a huge thank you. Just one question about the second paragraph under holidays and whether there is in fact an element of redundancy here. The second paragraph begins, so far as is possible, cover for holidays should be arranged by the cleric for the normal range of services. It then goes on to state that the cleric must liaise with their colleagues to ensure that there is at least one service of Holy Communion in their mission area each Sunday. And as somebody who for many years served in an area where there were no other ordained clergy for many miles around, and I'm pleased to say that by today, 4 local vocations to the ordained ministry have arisen. And so there are now ordained ministers in that area. For many years, it was impossible for us to organise a Holy Communion on a low Sunday if I happened to be away. And with the understanding of all and the enabling of the laity, it was possible to have an act of worship, but not a Holy Communion. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that we give the cleric and the local people of God the responsibility for arranging cover for holidays, but that might not be Eucharistic, and that might be with the consent of all. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers, so therefore I give the right to reply to Mr. Tim Llewellyn.
Tim Llewellyn, lay elected St David's. Thanks very much, everybody, for your comments and the thought that's gone into them. I won't go through every single comment in detail. The first thing I do want to say, though, is that we were genuinely concerned at the governing body meeting in April that when the initial private members' motion was raised and all the various amendments that were being tabled, that the initial motion would then have been amended out of all recognition. And so I felt that it was right then to be supportive of the procedural motion that Bishop Gregory led us into. I know that may not have left a great taste in the mouths of some people, but I was genuinely concerned that we would end up with something that perhaps had unintended consequences. And I'm just so pleased that we have been able to bring back the private members' motion or the updated motion at the next available opportunity. Normally, as I think one speaker said, sometimes these things get kicked into the long grass, but this is an example of where we have brought it back and stuck to our initial commitment. A lot of time has been spent talking about individual responsibility, and yes, that is key, but let's not forget that there is the wraparound support, be that through the formal procedures and processes, but also around the people who are with you, be those clerical and lay within your ministry areas. I'm very grateful to Kate for her supportive comments, because in fairness it was Kate who brought the bill in the very first place, so I'm pleased that we've had some favourable comments there from Kate. In terms of the Archdeacon's point about various HR tools, that's been noted, and I saw Bex scribbling as that was being mentioned. But I am told that the MDR system could be used as a tool to support in this particular area. And in terms of the final point there raised about the issue of the ability to provide at least one service of Holy Communion in the mission and ministry area, that there is always this catch-all at the end of, in case of difficulty, the advice of the area dean and or the archdeacon should be sought. So we're not leaving it totally on the shoulders of the individuals. There's always that sort of escalation route if a point of difficulty were encountered. So that's really what and I don't, did you, no, Bishop Gregory didn't want to add anything further on that. So I think it's appropriate now for me just to formally propose to the governing body that the Standing Committee approve the drafting of the changes to the terms of service, and we're asking for the governing body to support the drafting of the terms of service as you've seen in front of you.
Bishop Gregory, formally second.
Formally second.
Yeah, thank you. So this is by simple majority vote of the governing body. Please remember to use your voting cards. So please, all those in favour of the motion, please indicate. Thank you. Any against? None. Any abstentions? None. Then that motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. We come to the end of what was the business for session 2, but we will move to session 3 because we are ahead of ourselves. And so I will vacate the chair and ask Mrs. Sue Rivers to take the chair for agenda 11, the report of the Standing Committee.